Hey everybody, welcome to another What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's Francis and Nate with another Dad Chat. Nate, happy first Father's Day. We're a little belated on this one, but your first one, what'd you get into?
Well,
I mean, other than everybody being sick.
yeah, I'll spare the long story. That's one, but we didn't really have much of an opportunity to celebrate Mother's Day because of the same problems. So I decided that my Father's Day thing would be doing a surprise Mother's Day thing for Cynthia because our daughter had been sick and she hadn't been able to be in nursery the day they made Mother's Day cards. So I got Cynthia a really nice, like a framed picture printed of her and the baby. And I got her flowers and I made pancakes as like a breakfast, blueberry pancakes. But I also bought some baby safe, toddler safe craft stuff. And so we made a Mother's Day card for her and got some handprints from our non-fingerprint enjoying daughter. She's actually pretty good with it for me, but apparently at nursery she does not like it.
It's a weird feeling. Babies start to have kind of they start to get into their textures that they like and they don't like. I was in Louisville, Kentucky for Father's Day for a dance competition for my daughter. And something that I noticed that my wife pointed out to me was, when Mother's Day came around on Sunday, dance was canceled. My nephews didn't have anything going on, but on Father's Day, there's dance competitions all over the place. My nephews both had a baseball game on Father's Day. It seems like Father's Day, they're like, no, don't you want to go out and watch your kids do stuff? And I mean, I love my kid, but no, I also want to sit on my ass and relax sometimes on Father's Day. So it was a very busy Father's Day for us. But we did also visit Indiana Caverns, which was a wonderful little show cave to visit. I don't know if you've been to that one.
No, but having lived in southern Indiana for a long time, obviously, going caving is just like a thing. Like, it's just such a, hobby pastime with friends. So while I've never been to Indiana Caverns, I've gone caving a lot in some mud-smelling limestone caves in Brown County, Lawrence County.
I'm jealous. I would have loved to crawl around. Boy Scout reservation we have here, Beaumont, has a cave that once upon a time you used to go into, but now, it's 2024 and we're too scared of kids falling in holes and stuff like that. Because guess what? There's a big fucking hole in the cave. So, they didn't want that to happen. But Indiana Caverns is a relatively new show cave. It's only been around since 2011, I think. So, obviously the cave has been around for, millennia, but the show cave part of it was very interesting. So it's still very new. They've got a little boat ride inside. They got a big lake, so you can tool around on a boat. I guess the guy who discovered it was very religious too. He's an astronomer and a pastor, so he's kind of doing this marrying up because he understands his audience, I guess. And he's just look, God and million-year-old caves perfectly match up to each other. It's okay. We can be cool with earth science and the Bible. It's okay as long as you're not one of those 6,000-year kind of Bible people. These things can match up. So there's a nice little video that you watch about the cave and how the guy found it and how he and his buddies, like you said, it's you and your homies, grab some headlamps and go into a hole in the ground and see what happens. But he always wanted his own show cave. And show caves are always also very funny to me because when you go in, they're like, look, you can't touch the walls, don't touch the outcroppings, don't touch anything inside of the cave, because the oils on your fingers and hands can really mess up the flow of the cave. There's always water moving inside of a cave, right? And if you touch a stalactite, the ones hanging from the top, and just rub your hands all over it, the water is not going to run over the oil that you've just deposited. It's going to fuck it all up, right? But they also show us video of them using C4 to blow a new hole for the cave for people to go into. And obviously there's walkways and there's lighting all over the place, and they got pontoon boats down there. So it's just always weird to be like, look, you guys can't touch the cave, but we can touch it all we want. It's fine because it's a show cave.
I've gone to Carlsbad Caverns because I lived in New Mexico as a kid. And so my mom took me and my brother there. My dad, I think, was probably not able to take time off because he was in the Army still, but we had time off from school. And so she took us to Carlsbad down in I believe southeastern New Mexico, but it's been a long time. New Mexico it's probably not even that big, but when you're that age, it feels impossibly large because, you'll drive for hours and still be in New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So Carlsbad Caverns is obviously like a wonder of the world level of, I believe, limestone cavern, but you know what I mean? Like that kind
Sure.
of just impossible stalactite, stalagmite formation. It's gorgeous. It's insane. It looks like something out of sci-fi.
Yeah. Show caves are incredible. I love that there exists a way for me to go into a cave without having to, possibly kill myself or feel super claustrophobic. I like it when there's lights in a walkway and there's a guide taking me through.
There's a lot of Carlsbad Caverns that's not, or at least wasn't in 1995. And so, like, I can remember going and, like, you needed a guide. But it was,
Yeah.
it was incredible. Did you ever hear the story about how they found it? Because it's a relative, like, I think they found it in the mid 20th century or earlier 20th century. Like, it was not a thing indigenous people might have known about it, but as far as sort of this Hispanic and or white settler culture in New Mexico, I genuinely think it was pretty recently they found it.
Is it one of those that, like, there was no real entrance to it and then somebody had to, like, drill a hole and find it? How did that work?
No, so it was such wide open prairie land that people probably had never happened upon the entrance before, but a rancher saw what he thought was a bushfire and went out to go and take a look at it and see if he needed to either put it out or call, help to put it out. And he realized when he got there that it wasn't a bushfire, it was bats leaving the cave. But there was
cool.
so much room, there was so much underground there that, it's probably, millions of bats. And it's wild when you're out there because there's lots of bats. And you don't really get bitten by mosquitoes the way you normally would in New Mexico, in the desert in summertime, at dawn and dusk and stuff like that. Like, they're everywhere. It's actually kind of wild.
They're eating.
They're out there eating. And so, yeah, they found this thing and it was just sort of like, okay, this goes far deeper than we realized. And it's, if I remember it's been a long time. I was, like 11. I was 10. I just recall them saying that, like, they believe they've mapped most of it, but there's an extent to which they won't really know because you don't really know if some of the smaller caverns that people absolutely can't pass through lead to then larger caverns so like you would imagine nowadays with stuff like fiber optic, remote controlled things, and I'm not going to say drones, but like remote operated small devices, it's possible they might be able to find more. But yeah, there were talks of using Carlsbad Caverns as like a nuclear fallout shelter because they're like, you can fit 20,000 people in here. Like,
Yeah.
It's insane. Weirdly, Britain has a similar thing. It's not as tremendous. I believe it actually may be old mining stuff. I can't remember, but they had a similar thing where they built like a sort of post-apocalypse government bunker in either a naturally occurring cavern or an old mine. But yeah, for Carlsbad, it's nuts because also I think I told you before that I was a Boy Scout briefly, but then when we moved to New Mexico, or rather when we moved to Indiana, I didn't do it anymore. And so I did 2 years of Cub Scouts and then 1 year of Boy Scouts once I turned 11. And basically within a month of turning 11 and being old enough to graduate to Boy Scouts, we went to Philmont.
Oh,
so
wow.
I did the thing, because, Philmont's in New Mexico. Like, it's not that far. So I did the thing that's like the big Boy Scout sort of jamboree capstone event. I mean, it wasn't a jamboree, but all the songs about, Philmont Scouting's Paradise and all this stuff. Because I think I've talked about this before on the show. I think this is still the case where it's recently changed for bad reasons. But when I was a kid, the Boy Scouts of America was the official boys' youth group of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or Mormons for short. So it was super organized and super active where I live because basically every Mormon boy was expected to be a Boy Scout or Cub Scout. And then, I guess Tiger Cubs.
Yeah.
Tiger Cubs, and then Cub Scout, then Boy Scout. Was Webelow the...
Webelows. Yeah, Webelows is like that in between. And
yeah.
It's supposed to stand for Will Be Loyal Scouts.
Yeah, that's extremely like 1920s lingo sounding stuff, isn't it?
It was even worse because when it was We Be Loyal Scouts. They had to un-ebonics it later on.
Oh, for fucking crying out loud.
It sounded too, I don't know, but yeah. My old handbook said We Be Loyal Scouts for Webelows, but regardless.
Yeah, the Boy Scouts of America is an interesting one because it's like, I have a friend he's still in the Army and he was an Eagle Scout, and he made the point that like he felt like dealing with lots of different Boy Scout troops in the sort of greater Chicago area where he was growing up, that like the ones that were super from like evangelical churches were kind of weird, whereas the ones that were like either Mormons or like just really like outdoorsy kind of, not quite crunchy hippie, but like that kind of, person who, like guy who grew up in southern Indiana caving all the time. That like they were really active out doing stuff.
Mm-hmm. And they wanted to share that. They want to share that with younger kids.
And it attracted a different kind of family who wanted their kids to be in scouting. I mean, I don't know. It's weird. Like, I don't really know what to compare it to because all of my friends who were Boy Scouts in Indiana who weren't Mormon were like big time stoners. Like there was this thing called the Fire Master, I think, and it seemed like it was a Midwest thing or maybe an Indiana only thing. And everyone I knew who did that was like mega pothead. Whereas like I think about thinking back on it, like the stuff that I did in the Boy Scout troop was like so mega wholesome. Like I can't even remember kids like swearing. You know what I mean? Like if you swore, like someone would tell on you, but not in like it's just more like it just didn't, it was weird. It was like so wholesome.
I didn't have that.
It's always like weird shit happens beneath the surface everywhere you go. It doesn't, but my memory, my recollection of it was just like, I would maybe tell jokes from things that I thought was funny. And then I'd basically get like a sort of age appropriate talking to from a parent, basically being like we can't talk that way. Cause I was like reciting a Calvin and Hobbes comic or something, but you know what I mean? Like,
right. You said, but, and some kid just like, I can't deal with this.
Yeah, for real. And that's how I know a lot about like weird Mormon arcana, like movies. Like, okay, there's a lot of deep Mormon lore, and Saturday's Heroes or Saturday's Warriors, I think is what it's called. It's like a Mormon musical, like it made for Mormon, not like the Book of Mormon, but like I remember hearing the Saturday's Warriors soundtrack. I know a lot about it just because like my friends, my neighbors, they had a family of 7 kids and it was 6 boys and 1 girl. They were all, you know, obviously they were like super like homeschool observant Mormon, like very Mormon. And it's interesting. Yeah. It's a very different way of growing up, but like, I don't know.
Well, as a Missourian in Boy Scouts.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The state which drove the Mormons out and tried to murder them all. We did not have that. As I mentioned, Beaumont is our nearby scouting campgrounds here. And I remember doing camping trips there with my group, and I was probably like 10 or 11 or so, you know, new to Boy Scouts. There was the group of us that was between 10 and 12, and then there was the group of kids that were like 14 to 16.
Yeah.
And there really weren't a whole lot of in-betweens, right? So the older kids, they were cool, but I remember listening to, that's where I got introduced to the Beastie Boys.
Oh, wow.
Specifically, B-Boys Getting with the Freak, where it has the cut-in of if it's going to be that kind of party.
I'm going to stick my dick in the mashed potatoes. We listened to that specific line like 20 times in a row. We were all firebugs, and our scoutmasters at the time were just like, that's fine. If you all want to be firebugs here where we can watch you. Yeah.
Like a lot of us had our pocket knives for our first time, so there's a lot of whittling going on. And I do also remember at one point at about 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock, the scoutmasters were off somewhere, and they were like, all right, older boys, you got to make sure that the younger kids don't, set fire or get lost or anything. And the older boys were like, cool, all of you younger kids, stay here, shut the fuck up, we're going to go streaking. And then they stripped down to just their sneakers and started running through all of the wooded areas, which full of poison ivy and ticks.
Whoops.
Yeah, so, but yeah, that was my Boy Scout experience was very fun. I know that people think that like, you know, Boy Scouts and, you know, creepy scoutmasters or anything, but our scoutmaster was a pilot for TWA at the time. This shows you how fucking old I am. And he was really cool. He was a great guy. He and all the other scoutmasters were really cool dudes that were just like, yeah, we'll teach you stuff and we'll do all the things and we'll kind of turn the other way as long as you guys don't like cut your fingers off or anything. You're fine.
It was interesting hearing my dad referred to as either Brother Bethay or Elder Bethay because like
no, none of that.
Yeah, because like we weren't in the church, but we went to the church at the time because like that's where the Boy Scout troop was.
Boy Scouts let anybody in now, which is nice.
Which is cool. No, and that's the thing is that like when I said the change for bad reasons was that I'm pretty sure that the LDS church no longer sort of had that mandatory affiliation with the Boy Scouts because the Boy Scouts more or less, if I remember, were either forced to or decided that you could be gay and be a Boy Scout.
Yeah.
Because they basically tried to sort of aggressively interpret the clause in the Scout Oath about morally straight, meaning you're heterosexual. And it's like, yeah, I don't think that. But I mean, also then you look about it, it's like, I'm going to be real with you. If you get to the origin of the Boy Scouts and Lord Robert Baden-Powell, I don't really think Baden-Powell would be particularly concerned about trying to keep you out if you were homosexual, so long as, well, let's put it this way. I don't believe there is any documentary evidence that can prove that Baden-Powell abused boys. What is known is Baden-Powell loved to invite his like-minded friends over to look at photos of naked boys, and that his family destroyed all of his correspondence and burned it after his death. In some of his letters that have been published, he basically said that something to the effect of like the sort of spiritual reinvigoration of the masculine ethos by watching naked boys swim or something like that. Now, this man was a product of the Victorian era in a lot of ways, and you'll find this kind of just like weird, freaky guy thing.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find it recurring through lots of history of the British Empire. But that's a thing that the Brits haven't really come to terms with. And I think that the Boy Scouts of America have to they acknowledge the kind of link with Baden-Powell and the Boy Scouts, Scouting International.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's so much of an American institution, and it's kind of like removed from the British kind of origin. I don't really know how popular it is in Britain, to be honest with you. I have seen some scouting things here and there. One time we were at a gas station right over the border in Scotland, and there was some kind of like scouting event for like whatever the Scottish version of the Scouts is, because all of the kids were in kilts.
Oh, that sounds way better than.
But they were like in uniform. They're in a uniform, but in kilts too.
Sounds way better than our brown shirts and shorts.
Shorts, yeah, and our
green shorts, the socks that come up over your calves and everything. The green socks with the red stripe, man. The Boy Scout uniform was just like screaming, "Look at this virgin."
Well, it's also so like ill-fitting, and it's just, I mean, what I recall about it was also just like,
it really does prepare you for the army.
Well, it's weird because think about it, my mom and dad were both in the army. My uncle, 2 of my 3 uncles were in the army. So for me, cool, now I get to wear a uniform. That was like kind of a thing I enjoyed. But I don't know, when I look back on it, I don't actually have a lot of really clear memories of stuff. Just I remember doing it a lot and us doing some activities, but like I wasn't really. If you think I'm scatterbrained now, can you imagine me with the energy of a 8-year-old or 9-year-old or 10-year-old? I mean, come on, like.
I know what an unmedicated 9-year-old looks like. I see that on occasion in my own child.
Yeah, and I was unmedicated until I was, let's fucking count here, like 38. So, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, man. Like, it's weird. Like, I don't have any negative memories of Boy Scouts, but like, it seems there's just like a lot of fucking horrible shit that happened.
Yeah. Look, I don't have any negative memories of being an altar boy either, but I know that shit happens.
Yeah,
so.
That's kind of like the punchline, but like, it's obviously not everyone, but like, it did happen a lot.
I was an altar boy because you made money by doing like side wedding, being an altar boy for weddings and funerals and stuff like that. You'd always get like $20 or so at the end of the service. So we did it for money. Yeah,
I mean, and that's the thing too, is that like, I think that it's weird because it's not necessarily the default experience that people had, but it was one of those things where the institution behaved so badly across, I mean, obviously across centuries, but fucking across decades in the modern era, to the point where like now everything is tarnished by this.
Yeah, it's much like being in the military, especially our time in the army. Tarnished by this whole, generational war that kind of sucked. And it's hard to be like, yeah, but I had fun sometimes. Like, you're not going to be a civilian and get to shoot a .320 grenade launcher.
Yeah, I mean, an automatic grenade launcher, firing it on down range, like on a firing range. Like, it's cool as hell.
Yeah.
It's sick as fuck. Shooting an AT-4, shooting a big-ass rocket.
Fuck yeah.
Firing mortars, pulling the lanyard and firing a howitzer. Like, riding in the stupidest, biggest vehicles you can possibly imagine. Riding on helicopters, like, jumping out of helicopters. I mean, like, yeah, there was a lot of stuff that was fun. But what's weird for me is that, like, I didn't ever see what you would describe as, like, objectively just unabashed war crimes kind of stuff. I heard some rumors here and there, and I did see when stuff was reported, like, the investigation was so glad-handed. That's what led to my belief that if you were convicted of killing civilians or some other crime like that downrange, like in country, you fucking did it. Because the army and every other institution like it is going to go out of its way to exonerate you by any means necessary, unless it literally can't. And so that's, like I said, when you hear me say this, that's not just me pulling it out of the ether. Like, from what I saw, like, you fucking, if someone's convicted, like a Mike Behenna or a fucking any of these guys, like, they did it. Like, they absolutely did it. Because, like, otherwise their units and the army in general would have found a way to exonerate them, or at least quietly punish them in a way that yeah.
Right. If you do something where all of your friends are like, that guy was really fucked up and you need to do something about it, then you probably did.
Yeah, because my soldiers were not exactly, like, one of the dudes who came to me one time when I heard this, he'd heard the story, was like, had basically been sort of ad hoc the unit sniper for his company, or for his platoon at least, had definitely killed people that way, and then went to sniper school. And he came to me and he's like, this sounds so fucked up that, like, you're the only officer I trust to take it seriously. And it's like, if that guy's coming to you, then there's a problem.
Something's fucked up.
Yeah. And so like, the thing that really radicalized me, I think, when I think about this stuff, was just that it wasn't necessarily that it was like, oh, they were doing My Lai shit. Because in the incident this guy reported, no one died, but what they had done could have potentially killed a lot of people.
Sure.
And no one was harmed. But basically, apparently they had let the Afghan military units more or less at gunpoint take civilians out to be like a human mine clearance for their vehicles.
Oh,
And they saw it happening and didn't stop them. And they're like, haha, the Afghans are just fucking being insane. It's obviously a war crime. And obviously they were obligated to stop it. But the investigation, from what I understand, basically turned around and was like, well, yeah, it happened, but the Afghans did it. It was no Americans were involved. So we're like, not our problem.
right.
That kind of thing is actually what radicalized me is like that apathy, that callousness, looking at civilians, looking at Afghans as just fundamentally unequal, being like, these people don't deserve human rights. They don't have civil rights. I don't care if they die. If we accidentally kill them and we can't weasel our way out of it, we're going to pay them $4,000 and that's enough. You know what I mean? Like that attitude actually, more than like the violence, it was more like you see it just seep into everything. You know what I mean? You see it like when I think about institutional discrimination, when I think about America and like the way most white people act in America, you know, the thing that was really kind of the definitional thing for me, weirdly,
What's that?
watching a National Guard lieutenant from the Georgia National Guard flip his fucking shit that he had to wait in line for the chow hall behind Afghans who were interpreters.
Ugh.
And it's like, they're people too, man. Like they got in line
Right.
before you. But no, I should not have to wait in line behind any of them because I am more important than any of them. That attitude, like that's just kind of it, man. In my opinion, there are a lot of white Americans who feel that way about anyone who isn't white. And
Yeah.
white is defined by them and can change however they want it to.
Yeah. I have said we've got a lot of Afghans that have settled around me
Mhm.
and they're super nice.
Yeah.
And because they're interpreters, or at least somebody in the family is an interpreter, they have somebody who speaks really great English in the family that can, you know, kind of help everybody else navigate. And I've talked about St. Louis being an incredibly racist city many times,
Mhm.
and it is the
Yeah.
very racist city. But where I live specifically is so full of people from all over the place because our international center, which takes in a lot of the refugees and helps them find places, is fairly nearby. I think it's like about a mile and a half away from me. So there's a lot of resettlement that happens here. We've got a lot of Mexican restaurants and Hispanic businesses, and we've got Afghan businesses popping up. We've got an Afghan restaurant not too far away. We've got a lot of really great stuff. And so far I have not seen anybody like be shitty to these people, but I feel a need to protect them because like something that I want to try to explain to any American that is, you know, kind of rolling their eyes or giving shit to these people is like an interpreter was in more danger than I ever was in Afghanistan.
100%. Yeah.
I got to leave and my family wasn't there. And yeah, the Taliban's going to come for me. Like, fine, fuck it. I've got me and my 50 other friends dressed like me are going to stop you. But like the interpreter has to go home at some point. There's no way to like secretly go home anywhere. So like you're always constantly under watch and trying to stay out of it. And the fact that these people were able to live there for years and years helping us and making money and doing what they did for us, whether or not you agree with the war in Afghanistan, those people deserve at least to come here and feel a little bit more safe.
And I'd say that they risked their lives doing that. I mean, like,
yeah,
if you're like, well, the mission was stupid, I agree. But these
yeah,
people
100%.
were typically, as Cat 1 interpreters, paid about $120 a month. And they were exposed to incredible danger. And lots of them died. And as you were saying, Francis, when they, like, I had an interpreter who was from a particular minority ethnic group in Afghanistan that's very identifiable. And he was from a part of Ghazni where that ethnic group is, there's a lot of those communities living there. And then he was assigned one of his first units to a unit that was in basically a part of Ghazni that was majority Pashtun that was very pro-Taliban. And it's the same province as the one he's from. And like people recognized him.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me that like one time he was interpreting radio chatter after a meet and greet. And a guy got on a Nikon and was like, hey, interpreter, I know exactly where you're from. And I'm going to get you and I'm going to cut you to fucking pieces with my knife. Sooner or later, I'll find you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one of those things when he was probably about 18, 19 when this happened. I mean, he started interpreting. He lied about his age. He started interpreting when he was 16. And, you know, he did it for like, I mean, Christ, 9 years, 10 years. They kept losing his packet. Finally got his packet. He's an American citizen now. He and his wife and his kids live in America. And he actually works in refugee resettlement. He's like one of the nicest, kindest people I've ever met in my life. And it's one of those things where I just think about like the hurdles. I mean, because it wasn't just me. There were lots of other officers who had worked with who loved him and were like, we got to help this guy with his packet. One of them was a lieutenant general in the National Guard. And even this guy struggled to get his fucking emails answered by the State Department. A 3-star general. And he can't get the fucking SIV mailbox at the U.S. Embassy Kabul to respond to him. So what do you think a fucking captain is going to get? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I actually got my senator involved in it was Mark Begich, the Democratic senator for Alaska. And I don't think it was the sole difference, but enough people got their elected reps involved that eventually his packet got through and he got approved and he made it to America. And I don't know, like I think about it sometimes. Yeah, I worry because I've been helping out a family. I've just been paying Western Unioning money, and I put in all the paperwork and all the affidavits for a guy I worked with who worked with the U.S. a lot for a time, but was never an interpreter. He was an Afghan police officer, and he's almost done with the process. He's gone. I need to check in with him today. Actually, he finally got his P1 visa interviews for him and his family at the U.S. Embassy in Islamabad because he went to Pakistan, and he would have been fine, and they would have been fine in Pakistan. I send them money every month. I make plenty of money podcasting. Money goes a long way there. But Pakistan decided to go fucking ethnic cleansing on Afghan refugees and was basically deporting everyone. And so he had a visa, but his family didn't. And so they had to go back to Afghanistan and stay with his brother-in-law. And then now we were able to get them back over the border, but we had to pay basically like some whatever fucking Pakistani thing to get medical visas like in 48 hours. But we got it. It was like $1,600, but we got it. We got the money to them. They got over. They were all there for the interview. And I think basically once if he's assuming they're cleared, they have to do medical, and then a refugee resettlement thing is going to get them they'll have visas, and either they get them tickets or I'll buy them. I don't fucking care. I'll buy them tickets. I'll call my old interpreter and be like, because he actually works for Catholic Relief Services, and I'll just be like, what should I do?
Yeah, bring him to St. Louis. We got plenty of spots. We got a little Afghan bodega next to the Euro shop down here. So
knowing him, he's probably going to go to the DC area because he's got family, his ethnic group, and his like the sort of sub clan and stuff. They've got family in that area. A lot of Afghans do, and like the DC area is like the most, but then also New York, and there are a couple others I always forget, but like New York has a bunch, like Long Island and Queens has a bunch, but Fremont, California, the Bay Area, there's a ton of them there too. Huge amount of Afghans there.
See, I want to get as many Afghans into St. Louis because my hope is that they can do for St. Louis what the Bosnians did in the 90s, which is come into the area and be like, all right, but we know how to fix this place up. And like all the Bosnian refugees that we had come through were really made a lot of parts here in South City really nice. And they got jobs contracting, so they all, learned how to, do housework and things like that. And now the problem is now they're all successful and they're like, well, I don't want to live in the fucking city. I'm getting out of here.
I don't want to live in St. Louis. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they moved to the county, so they're still in the area, but they're like, yeah, I'm not going to live in the city. This place sucks.
No, I'm going to move to Country Club Hills. I'm going to move to Ferguson. Those sounds like great places.
Hey, I'm going to move to Ferguson.
Are you? I thought you were going to move across the river.
My wife is very back and forth about a lot of stuff because really we just want to get out of St. Louis City because like the city government here really fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And in Ferguson, you can get a half an acre and a 3-bedroom house and a garage for like $150 still. And I'm a North County kid. I grew up in Ferguson, Normandy area. So I'm all about it. I'm just like, yeah, I love this area. It's quiet. You can get a lot of house and a lot of space. Like my parents have a really nice house on a 1/4 acre. They have a garage underneath, and then they have a garage, like a second carport kind of in the backyard. I mean, they bought that when I joined the Army, so 20 plus years ago. But they got that for like, I don't know, 89, I think, or so.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when there was a time in like Midwest, kind of suburbs and stuff like that where, yeah, $100,000 would get you a nice place.
My house now costs $115 right at the beginning of the pandemic, and we want something a little bit bigger. We want some more yard, and we want to not be in the city proper. And moving to Illinois requires a lot of, I don't know, just like it's not quite like moving to another country, but it is annoying enough that like all of the rules are slightly different.
I mean, I'm literally moving to another country, so I mean,
I know. Again, you're moving to another country again.
Yeah, for the second time.
And then there's Joe, who's just constantly living in some country somewhere.
He loves the Netherlands, though. I think he's going to want to stay there. He really likes it there. Like, and I can imagine that coming from a place as dysfunctional as Armenia, then going to, like, for all of its cultural foibles, one of the most functional countries in Europe.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that must be nice.
I would probably love to stay in the Netherlands, too. Like, I am ready to be bike pilled, but unfortunately, I live in a place where we run over bicyclists, so
do I. And I live in Europe, but yeah. I was thinking about this because, we have to kind of think about plans and stuff like that if such situations emerge where either, the Switzerland doesn't work out, and our plan B is to do what Joe did and go to the Netherlands. But to be honest with you, I couldn't really do that now because the degree to which you have to close everything of your business and relocate it to the Netherlands, like that would put me in a weird spot with what I've got in the UK. And then also, I think if we determine down the line with our daughter, or if we have any more kids. If there's any kind of thing with educational special needs where like they're going to, because quite frankly, you'll get better special ed in the United States, in state schools, than you will in basically any European country, because the provisioning of it is just different, and they're not required to provide it. And so obviously we don't know.
It's not great in the public schools, but it does at least exist.
It does exist. Yeah. Yeah. And so we'd probably move to Minneapolis, because we had planned on that as a fallback, even if my parents hadn't moved there, but now they did. And I mean, like buying a place, well, I'll be real with you, Minneapolis is expensive, and St. Paul is also really expensive, but it's more expensive than you're describing in Ferguson for damn sure. But it's not New York expensive. You know what I mean?
Right. It's
not London expensive. It's certainly not Geneva expensive.
No.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you can get a decent house price in the Midwest for that. How long has it been since you've dealt with extreme cold, though?
A very long time.
That's a northern state, so. But at least in America, we build our houses with the knowledge that it's going to be hot or cold.
It's weird here, because there's been times when it's been like in the 20s, but British houses aren't. Like, you always see Brits being like, oh, our houses are built to trap in heat, and that's why they're so hot in summer. Don't make fun of us. And it's like, no, they're just badly built, because they don't trap in heat. They trap in cold in the winter and heat in the summer, because they're drafty as fuck and they're built like shit. And at no price point can you get a good house. And at no point of construction can you get a good house, because Victorian houses, drafty as fuck and falling up, and probably had 18 different dog shit builders doing their own repairs on it, and it's falling apart. Mid-century homes, like, some of them are okay, but a lot of them are very badly built, just like shoddily, like okay designed, and then like all of the concrete casting or whatever was misshapen, and they put it in anyway. It's supposed to be 9 points of attachment per panel, and there's like one. It's like, oh, well, the only problem there is that it might leak a little bit of moisture. Famously a not moist country, the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And then modern stuff is like, everything is it's just a scam. It's like, November loves to make reference to this on Trash Future about the guy, I think it was on Reddit or the Awful forums in the 2000s, who bought like a router, like a Linksys router, and he opened it up, and it was just, the router had been stolen. It was just a bag full of sand, and someone had written puto on it, which bit of a slur in Spanish. That it's British construction of new homes. It's just that.
Yeah. My wife and I discussed like the age range of houses that we're willing to buy in, because we had the Victorian house, which comes with a lot of problems.
Yeah. The ghost of Mark Twain is always in there fucking being drunk and telling you tales, giving you.
Yeah. Look, I would love a Mark Twain ghost. That would be great. Do you know how much money I would make if I had Mark Twain as a ghost in my house? Like,
yeah, instead I've got Ambrose Bierce's ghost, and he's just furious that people only know one story of his.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the last house that we did own was owned by the same family for 80 plus years, and I know at least a few people died in there, so, old age passing kind of thing. I don't know if we had ghosts. We had cats, so if we had ghosts, we just blamed everything on any...
Do you believe in ghosts?
No, I don't.
I don't either, but I do sometimes wonder if there is such a thing as like a kind of imprint of events on things. I don't know. I can't say for certain. I don't think that like the spirits of the dead are haunting and walking among us, because if that was the case, there's like 80 billion people wandering the earth, and like they'd be fucking way more shit up. But
right.
I do sometimes wonder like if a place takes on a kind of weird significance, if there's some alteration in some way. I don't know if it's possible.
Oh yeah. Well, we've got the Lemp Brewery here and the Lemp Mansion, and Lemp was the big one before Budweiser they kind of came up around the same time. We also had Falstaff here for a little bit. Falstaff Brewery still exists. We got a smokestack that says Falstaff on it. It's great. But the Lemp Mansion, like the Lemp family was all crazy, and like multiple members of the family killed themselves in the mansion. But now the mansion has a really great like restaurant in it down on the first floor, and you can stay in the rooms that they have. So
you get to stay in the Life is Worth Living cafe.
Yeah. It's great. My wife and I stayed in one of the rooms years ago, and we found out one of the floorboards was loose. So we pulled it up, and there was full of notes from other people.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just like this hidden kind of space that, like, if you discovered it, you could pull it up and read the notes from other people who had stayed in that room. You could leave your own note and things like that.
How far back did they date?
They weren't all dated. The oldest one we saw was like a couple of years.
Okay.
I don't know if somebody like goes in and cleans them out every once in a while.
There's some really weird like maintenance closets in some of the bathrooms at Brooklyn College, and like the design is just strange. So you might think like you're in the bathroom and you're like, is this an exit? And you open it up and there's like a maintenance closet, but it has a window, and they're full of graffiti from like the 40s.
Yeah.
And it's like, like Herschel Steinberg class of 1948 or something like that.
Any dicks?
No, I think it predates the phenomenon of drawing dicks on things.
Excuse me, the Romans were drawing dicks on things.
Well, I mean, in terms of like American prudishness. It would be probably have been removed. I'm sure they knew about this. They just left it alone. And the name isn't the name choice I make there isn't coincidental. In the 40s, in the 50s, I think up until the 60s, Ivy League schools and a lot of elite liberal arts schools in America had quotas on how many Jewish students they'd admit, and the City University of New York didn't. So Brooklyn College would be at the time referred to as like Jewish Harvard, because a lot of people obviously like they just, they wanted to seek higher education, and they weren't interested in going to a place where it's like, no, only 10 Jews can be here, otherwise fucking you're going to corrupt us somehow. You're going to kill Christ again.
You're going to link up like Voltron or something.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to do an ultra mignon, and it's going to make this fucking place levitate. And so you would find these kind of, also because since the 70s, CUNY's basically like had no budget. There's a lot of these kind of artifacts of leftover, old students visiting, stuff like that. There were some Kilroys in there for sure, like the little overhanging nose guy, but extremely like 1940s energy, but there were not any, I didn't see any dicks. I saw a similar thing where there was a jail cell in Trier, Germany, where like a lot of students would get imprisoned for like drunken disorderly conduct. And so all of their old graffiti from like when they were put in the jail in the drunk tank overnight was still there from like the 1890s. So I love encountering when it's not like scary, when it's not like fucking,
like when you go like in Jefferson City, you can tour the old Missouri State Penitentiary. Yeah, that's not fun graffiti.
No, it's not. I'm gonna go like, oh, look at this nice graffiti. And it's like the scene from Ivan's childhood where they're like, it's like, we're gonna be executed tomorrow, avenge us and stuff like that. I was like, no, that's not really a fun thing to see.
Missouri does do a lot of what my wife and I call ghosts of commerce, which is where you don't necessarily believe in a ghost, but you're like, hey, for $20 you can come in here and do ghost hunting. And we did that over in Alton, Illinois. They have the Mineral Springs, and it was a hotel that was built on top of a natural spring, and then you could stay there and you could go down to the spa down below and stay, swim around in the springs and everything. And they gave us all those the copper divining rods or something. You're supposed to hold on to them.
Yeah, like divining ones. Yeah, like the ones.
Yeah,
like
you hold on to them, and they're supposed to like point to a ghost or something.
Drowsing rod. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, these ones find ghosts, not water, apparently. And anytime you'd like take pictures, and there'd be like little, like if you took a picture with a flash and there were dust motes, and the dust motes would get kind of illuminated because they're reflecting back, they look like these little kind of glowing dots. So like the person who was taking us around would look at the photos and be like, those are orbs. Those are ghost orbs. Those are orbs of spirits or something. It's like, I think you just need to vacuum down here. But also, I like that you're immediately like, yep, ghosts. All of that, ghosts.
All ghosts.
Ghosts all the way down.
A friend of mine who was a really, really, really nice guy, I haven't spoken to him forever. I need to check in with him. Left the army, had kind of real bad personal life problems, and then kind of reinvented himself as an organic gardener in Hawaii, and then went to go get a PhD in marine biology. Really, really interesting guy. And he always told me that he liked living on the Big Island because he's like, I know I'm sane, and being around this many crazy people reinforces to me that I'm sane.
Mm-hmm.
I did not have the same experience. I wanted to get out because it was so all-encompassing how many just fucking insane people there are there. But people who know Hawaii will know what I'm talking about. If you go out to Puna, Pahoa, places like that on the Puna side of the island, the not vacation beaches because the current is way too rough, the black sand beaches, there are a lot of people who live either in the jungle or on the fringes of it, and it's just almost all of them are transplants. They're not raised in Hawaii, whether they're native Hawaiian or not. Most of them are transplants from the continent, the mainland.
A lot of white people.
A lot of white people who came out there and then are now too broke to leave. You hear a lot about healing crystals and fucking interdimensional beings, but you'll also just hear some really scary fucking rune magic fascism kind of stuff. And
well, as long as they're on an island.
Yeah, in the middle of the Pacific. But my friend, he pointed something out to me. He's like, and I think it's a good observation. He's like, I'm not saying that I believe in spiritual communion and stuff. It's very possible that there are phenomena that we don't know about, because we can't observe them. And his example was, imagine 200 years ago or 100 years ago telling people that, like infrared, the concept of like, oh, your hand leaving a print on something and you can see the heat signature, like people could understand that. But the idea that infrared would let you see clouds, see through clouds and how much moisture was in clouds, for example, like that's a thing you could know. And you could plot this stuff to track where a storm was going to go, or that you could use these kinds of things to see through materials to see if there was heat inside it, stuff like that. Like you would be able to see stuff and confirm it. Like it would have sounded fictional. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that means that there's just a fucking ghost jamboree happening everywhere around us. But that it is possible that there are certain kinds of things that like are there that might be felt or observed in some way, but we can't confirm it, and that maybe someday you can. Who knows?
Yeah.
That to me is an interesting question. Like what sort of things do we either take on faith or deny based on just the fact that there isn't any evidence, that maybe like you might change your position because there is evidence someday. Who knows? But like, I really don't like clinging to the idea of the spirits of the dead or among us, because I feel like that's outside of the kind of like spooky Halloween song version. That's also, I feel like, a grief response. And I feel like that can lead people down some really, really unhelpful tracks, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I have always been, when my daughter was old enough to start understanding ghosts and watching media that involves ghosts, and I've always been like, look, I've never seen evidence of a ghost. I don't believe that they exist. There is no evidence for ghosts. Because with my daughter, she's very open to suggestion. So I try to like, look, I don't want you growing up to be a woo-woo crystal person. Like, if you want to collect pretty rocks, fine, great.
But they don't have intrinsic powers.
Right. They are rocks. They are rocks that somebody has polished up and cut to make look nice. They are rocks. My wife is the counter to this. My wife is not a crystal person, but she will say, like, look, we don't know. There could be ghosts. There could be this, that, or the other thing. And I say, sure, look, I am all about having my mind changed, but I don't believe that this exists. I don't believe that there's any kind of afterlife. I think this is all that you get. This is the brief crack of consciousness in between two infinities of nothingness. Enjoy it while you can and stop worrying about ghosts. I think that's kind of sunk in. My philosophy, my nihilistic philosophy, but also not in a like, sad that, hey, nothing matters. It's more of a, hey, thumbs up, nothing matters, go have fun. Just don't hurt anybody else in the process and you'll be fine. But I know, man, she's 9, well, almost 9. She's not quite 9. So there's still a lot of her brain to form into stuff. So fingers crossed the next, we've done halfway. Now we've got to do the teenage years up to her being 18. And
we also got to do the sassy but still a little kid preteen years. The double digits before teenage years is an interesting one, because they're still emphatically little kids.
She's already kind of there.
Yeah.
When she is getting ready for bed and she's overtired, she can't go to sleep. And she wants a fidget. She wants something to play with. And the problem is I don't want to give her something that's like one of her logic puzzles or something. I don't want to give her something that's hard, because that doesn't help her fall asleep. So you have to find something just like, look, you have all these stuffies here. Can you do this, do that? So last night I gave her a little plastic comb so she could brush her stuffies, and that helped her fall asleep. There was a lot of yelling and screaming, and I'm not going to go to sleep, and I'm going to be crabby tomorrow, and it's going to be all your fault because you won't give me this thing that I want. That is often when she's overtired or hungry. And so I don't know if that's everybody. I have been told though, like, and I have this thing because we homeschool and we're not always around other kids. My daughter's in Girl Scouts. We went to our local wolf sanctuary here as a Girl Scout trip. And I get to be around these other kids who are about the same age and seeing them do all the same stupid shit that my kid is doing. And they're like, all right, cool. It's not just my kid. They're all like this. And, kind of describe things to other parents. Like, oh, yeah, no, I got screamed at last night, too. It happens, Kid's fine today, but was upset about absolutely nothing yesterday. And that's just how it goes. So look forward to that the next half decade for you.
I mean, my daughter can't talk, but she is already angry that, for example, I take away a tissue so she can't rip it into shreds and put it in her mouth. She gets mad.
Yep.
She gets mad that I won't let her take the drawstring for the hood, the tightening elastic drawstring for my hoodie on the sweatshirt I'm wearing, and jam it into her mouth. She gets mad at those things. And so it's like, I can only imagine as the word no becomes part of her vocabulary, eventually, what we're in for. But I mean, she's teething right now. Like, we can see the teeth. Like, so it's just one of those things where she's crabbier for that reason. But
yeah,
she's really easygoing. And I think that's the thing, is that because she's so easygoing, when she gets mad about stuff, it's kind of a shock. In the same way that she started getting sick when we first started her nursery, and like, she had never been sick before at all. She wasn't sickly at all. She didn't spit up. She didn't have reflux, nothing like that. And so it's just been a shock to adjust to the fact that like, this is a new kind of thing, and it's gonna pass eventually, because she'll, immune system and such. But she's at that age where, yeah, it's happening. And so it's like, I think I just tell myself a lot of times that like, if it's bad, it'll change and it'll go away probably. And if it's good, it's great and appreciate it, but it's also probably transient, because that's just the way it goes.
It's all going to change. Everything, like, My daughter used to love to wear colorful twirly dresses, and now she's a t-shirt and shorts kid. Like, that's all she ever wants to wear. And it's a little like, you know, when you got a little girl and you want to like, oh, why don't you dress up pretty? And she's like, no, I'm going to wear my Spider-Man t-shirt and my Marvel shorts, and that's how I'm going to go to camp today. And my Paw Patrol Crocs on. It's like, all right, I guess. You know, you got to let them do it.
I think I told you the story about the kids coming over. There were these little boys that used to live on our street, and they definitely were lacking in supervision. But during COVID, like, I understood there wasn't much. And we live on a dead-end street. And I would be weeding the garden sometimes, and I would be like, I'd leave the garden gate open, so I'd go and take bags of stuff out, and they'd come and want to like see stuff in the garden just because it's like a space, you know. And so I'd be like,
yeah,
I try to like humor them, but at some points I'd be like, guys, I have to do stuff that involves things that can cut you, so I really like, you got to go home. And so I'd sometimes have these kids come over and try to. I remember one time the older one, they were like 5 and 3, and the older one wanted to come in the garden, and I was like, no, I can't, man, sorry. And he was like, slightly quiet voice, but he says, I'm going to tell your mum you won't let me play in the garden. And I was like, my mom was in America. You want me to call her? One time they came over in the summer and I was weeding, and I was like, all right, yeah, if you guys want to look at what I'm doing, fine. And the older one was wearing boxers and Crocs and nothing else. And the younger one was wearing like the world's most color clashing shorts, t-shirt, Crocs, and like a big sun hat, like a boonie hat. And I was just sort of like, I bet they dressed themselves.
Yeah.
And it was kind of chilly because it's not hot in summer that often here. This is probably about like June. So like, you know, it's probably like low 60s here. And I was like, are you not cold basically just wearing your underwear and Crocs in this weather? But no, he was fine. It's just, that's how it is.
Weirdly enough, my child also has that, like, no, it's not that cold outside. I can wear shorts and Crocs. And like, it is 40.
Yeah.
Please put these things on because you're going to be bitching at me later that you're cold.
Taking my friend's kid home, he was staying with us for a while his parents were at an event, and then we brought him back to their hotel in central London, and we had to take the bus, and he said he was fine, he wasn't cold, but I holding his hand across the street, I'm like, no, your hands are really cold. And stupid of me, I didn't think to bring gloves. And it was probably like in the like low 40s, high 30s. And so we finally found a solution that worked. That was probably the world's most awkward thing, but I was like, how about this? Put your hands in your pockets, and when we're crossing a street, we'll hold hands. But then like eventually he was drifting off. He was so tired. I'm like, I need to hold his hand the whole time. So we came up with a solution where I would hold his hand and put it in my coat pocket. And I'm like, this looks insane.
Right.
But it's like, he's 6. He's too little for his hands to get this cold and stay cold. Like, it's just not a good idea.
Sometimes you got to do some weird solutions.
Yes. And of course, our bus just randomly fucking went out of service, and they're like, sorry, we have to stop here at Waterloo Station, which means nothing to you, but to people who live in London, Waterloo is like where the crazy comes to hang out. And this was like a Saturday night. So I was just like, man, I am so not like, he's having a great time. He's having an adventure. And I'm just like, fuck, shit, fuck. But I guess that's a preview of having a 6-year-old. And also talking about this stuff, I believe we have an Ask a Dad question.
Yeah. So Nate, you have probably become very handy in the last few years with all of the construction and soldering and things like that. What's an appliance or a part of the house or your studio that you would never try to fix and you're like, no, we have to call somebody for this? For me, it's anything in the walls. Like, as soon as you need me to do plumbing work that isn't the physical toilet, or electrical work that isn't the outlet, or running some electrical, I'm not touching it. I can't do that.
Yeah, I think for me, in the places like where I am right now in the live room, where you have a plaster hollow wall with like insulating fiberglass in it, I would be really wary of doing any electric stuff, even if it was just recapping things just on the off chance of fire. Mm-hmm. And with water stuff, like, I think I would probably call a plumber pretty much in any situation, because if something goes out of commission, it's a huge problem here. And specifically down here, because we had a bathroom installed down here that has macerator to, you know, churn up and pump out stuff from the toilet, because it's below the water line, obviously, so it has to be pumped into the soil pipe. And I would not mess with any of that without a plumber, because if that has a problem and it can't pump stuff out, then we're at risk of flood. I wouldn't mess with any of the plumbing at all, even like small things down here, just because if it floods, we already have moisture problems. I had to get a commercial dehumidifier for it. It becomes a huge problem if we have standing water, leaking water, running water down here. So I'd say that. And I don't really want, like, we're not in a situation where we need it yet, but if we were going to need to run additional Ethernet lines for like 10 gigabit connections, or if we wanted to replace the whole building setup with 10 gig, I just would hire someone, because I know how to do it, but like a lot of it is just bare cable run through like a hole, like basically a punched hole in concrete. And even if you use grease and like lead lines and stuff, that's just going to be so much fucking work. And if you do something wrong and you have to replace a line, like it's just a nightmare. I would be willing to just pay a guy who does this for a living to come in and replace the drops. But to be honest with you, we only have a 200 megabit synchronous connection right now. We could get a gigabit connection on our current contract, but we don't really need that speed for what we do. And the building caps out at all the wiring in here is gigabit. And it's like, it's going to be years before we need that. If we did need one, like running a single line, like if I needed to run a single line between like the down here, the editing computer to the switch and the network attached storage, I might be willing to do that. But replacing it all myself?
No.
Hell no. That's just non-negotiable. Because I've done it, right? I know you've done it too. I've done running lines and punching down terminals and setting up wall boxes and installing that shit and doing bridges and doing inline couplers. And it's like, it's not technically hard, but if you mess something up, it's annoying. You also need the right tools, and you can't use the wrong tools. If you do, it fucks it all up. So like, why would I, at a certain point you ask yourself, is doing it myself and getting the experience worth spending as much as it would cost to have someone who does this for a living do it? Because I need when you factor in the time I'm wasting too.
Yeah. Well, Nate, I appreciate you jumping on, doing another Dad Chat, keeping us updated on how everything is going for you. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. As always, you can get even more content from us on our Patreon. $5 a month gets you access to everything. Coming up on almost 8 years of back catalogs for you to listen to. 3 new episodes a month coming out there, but of course, we always have our free ones here. I'm going to be making some other changes and doing some other updates. Going to be doing some more YouTube videos again. So keep an eye out for those things as well going forward. Nate, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yep. Have a good one.